Yeah, we've got. Okay, we're gonna do roll call really fast, just in case there's somebody off the camera that we are missing and we don't wanna do that. We're gonna make up time.
All right, so here in the room, we have Lieutenant Governor Holong, Representative Bombat, Wayne Emsley, Jeff Tashner, and Bill Overly. Logging in virtually, we have Secretary DeMatteis, Commissioner Navarro, Michael Bagato, and Denise Allen. For anyone I missed,
Anyone that we've missed? Anyone?
and Senator Townsend just popped on.
Alright, Senator Townsend, great. So we are here with our co-chairs, and before we get started, just want to say thank you for DHR and everyone working so diligently, and the new digs look very nice. And you're figuring it out.
Thank you. Yes, and we are still working out some of the technology, but we will have a camera installed for our next meeting early next year.
Oh gosh,
That will
see.
follow voices, so
Okay.
we appreciate in advance those participating virtually that you will only have the pleasure of seeing the Lieutenant Governor and Representative
Unfortunately.
today.
Sorry, just me. All right. But so what that means is, if you'd like to say your name before you speak so that people know, right? We can do as such. Okay, so can I have a motion for approval of the November 28th meeting minutes? Item number 2. We have a motion and second. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Aye.
Any abstentions? No. Ayes have it, and we have now approved the November 28th meeting minutes. And before we jump into all the other items on the list, if this was the appropriate time for Faith, if you would like me to talk about the future plans, or did you want to jump a little bit into the actuarials?
Lieutenant Governor, we certainly can talk about future plans.
Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and just while people are still alert and before they've had the chocolate in the room. And fall asleep. No, I'm joking. We had a conversation, meaning when I say we, the co-chairs, we got together and we're planning and thinking about the future. I know there had been some discussion at our last meeting where we heard concurrence, everyone agreed that we should continue the retirement subcommittee as per written in Senate Bill 29. Certainly members of the legislature can come back together and make modifications to whether who the members are or any other changes. That's certainly the prerogative, since this is now in code. And it was our understanding, given the tremendous amount of work that DHR has to do with rollout of plans and many other items on their plate, that we as a subcommittee would not meet again until sometime either late winter or early spring. But we would continue to meet. I know Representative Overly, you spoke very strongly about making sure the work continued. And so if it's everyone's prerogative, I had discussed and Representative Bombach and Senator Townsend had agreed that we would look at presenting perhaps our report in January to the governor or to the legislature, one or the other, or together. And that would be kind of our gathering in January, but then our next real meeting, where we would get into substance, would be in March. That would give DHR the necessary time they need to address items. And it would also give you all, who've been coming almost weekly, every other week, to meetings. So I would like to get any feedback on that, but anyone online or anyone present, thoughts on that idea about January. We'll be handing the report in, voting on the report today, and go to the governor and legislature by January 1, and then have a little informal presentation meeting January, formal meeting March.
This Representative Bombach, I think one of the issues I like being available to the extent that the SEBC, the governor, or say a committee of the legislature is interested in an in-person presentation. Which
If
they are, we'd be certainly welcome to such an invitation. And I know that there is an awful lot of concern for the next retiree benefit for 65+ year-old retirees, and the SEBC plans to be making their decision in March. I would think it might be helpful to have us meet in March.
Okay.
And frankly, I imagine it should be shortly afterwards. But I mean, that's just my thought.
Okay. Anyone else? Agreement, See nods in this room, anyone online, anyone online wanna add anything? Okay, if not, what I'll do, because I don't think it necessarily needs a formal motion, I mean, we've got consensus here, so. What we'll plan to do is, should the invitation be received, we can present to governor and or. Appropriate designees in the legislature, our report, that report will be voted on today. And that will be delivered with a cover letter to the members of the General Assembly and the governor. By January 1, I know Kristen is very ready for that to happen. She's over here on camera, for those who can't see her face, that elicited a big smile. And so we'll plan on coming together in March. Yes,
A crossover between that topic and the report. The bottom of page 14 is expected meeting cadence and timeframe for additional recommendations. I think it ties in with the conversation we just had. Maybe you'd like to discuss this when we're on the agenda item about the report, or maybe now as far as what do we think that what do we want to say about what our goal of future meetings, goals are for future meetings, what's the scope of the operations?
and I don't know, that's something new, and I don't know if you and Senator Townsend or others wanna have a conversation, or we can add in here pre-Medicare, we can add a line or two, just saying, Representative Overly.
I had I guess, just a general question in terms of what you might contemplate that the continuation of this committee would look at. Would it include potentially the price component?
I think the pricing you all were hoping to do is a subcommittee that would really delve in. And-
Yeah, I mean,
And this
I know
committee
it
could
was,
certainly, but again, this committee, if you look at the code and what it was charged for, it could go either way. I don't know if Senator
Yeah.
Townsend has thoughts.
I just wanted some clarity, because I know there was a discussion around a separate new subcommittee on the pricing issue. And I made the argument that I thought this committee was the committee that I would rather see address that issue, but, regardless, as long as it gets addressed, I just wanted some clarity.
So I'm waiting in case Senator Townsend wishes to weigh in.
Yeah,
first.
I'm happy to weigh in. And my apologies, I can't be there in person. My thoughts on that had been that there've been a lot of talk over the years. Obviously, some members of this group have made it very clear how long they've been pushing or wanting to see movement on this issue. My point had been that doing it as a new subcommittee, or even doing it within this subcommittee, is not necessarily the path that's needed, because there might be enough momentum or desire to address it more quickly and directly in the form of legislation, and then starts a legislative process, right? You don't need to have a subcommittee for every topic. There's all kinds of reasons why you would or wouldn't. And my point and my concern I had in previous month or two discussions about a new subcommittee, or even continuing, is that it might be ready to go sooner than that. So I hope it is, frankly. I think it's a key issue. I think I sang Jeff Tashner and others' praises last meeting, where I was everything Jeff was saying. This is amazing. This is so on point. This is entirely accurate about the concerns and frustrations we should all have about this. And about how if we don't address pricing and some of the, I would say, inequities in the system right now with regard to certain stakeholders being able to have their way and have pricing set and not have transparency. And if we don't address that, then the rest of what we're doing here is going to be of minimal impact. I completely agree with that. And that's a paraphrase of the great Jeff Tashner. So I think just the idea is we don't have to have a subcommittee. I think we could figure out in early 2024 whether or not either efforts will pass successfully in 2024. If they don't pass successfully, there's a chance that even though they don't pass, they're still packaged correctly, and it just takes a little more time. Or that through the plan C, in my mind, plan C would be if we just can't even package something, if it's too complicated, if there needs to be a different process involved, then a subcommittee would be, I think, the appropriate mechanism. And I would think we could figure that out by like February or March.
And while we're sitting here, not to put pressure, but Kristen, you're a great writer. I mean, do you want to come up with a line or two, and we can come back when we're going through the report, basically, addressing the topic that, the subcommittee, will, reconvene in March, and further discussion of pre-Medicare retirees and
And
other items.
I would suggest, Madam Chair, that the wording include the monitoring and reporting of progress of the recommendations that have been made. And this would be a good example of that, but there's other ones also. to make sure that communication with employees and retirees of the future steps is a step we want to make sure is acted upon, and I think there's multiple ones. And all of it's within the scope of SB 29, which is looking at the costs and the funding and the mismatch and the hopefully narrowing gap between the two. So I think there's plenty of things that are within our scope that can be in that and still very succinctly stated. And I like what Senator Townsend said of if it turns out that to accomplish it, the legislature would like the RHBAS or an offshoot of it to have a role in that, great, and ready and willing. But we'll leave that to the legislative leaders to determine that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, great. And if you don't mind, then just come up with a couple of the words and when we get to that in the report today, you'll have it. Okay, perfect. Very good. So we're moving on then to item number 3 on the evaluation report. Okay, okay, is that you, Mr. Yang?
I can start by introducing Margaret Timken. I feel like it's only fair, since these reports are prepared by Chiron, that Chiron actually represent them, and then I'm here to translate if needed. So with that said, I would like to welcome Margaret to the meeting.
Hi, Margaret.
Thank you, Joanna. I will share my video. So I am here. Hello, everybody, and good morning. Quickly, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what has occurred in the OPEB valuation this past year. The actual report is online, so if you really want to read something in your leisure time, it is out there for your review. We can get to the next slide real quick. Just a quick key summary of the results comparing last year to this year. As you can see, our active liability went from $4.6 billion to $4.9 billion. And our inactive liability went from 4.3 billion to 4.6. So our total liability has increased by just under 9 billion to almost $9.6 billion. Our market value of assets hasn't grown as much, but we did have that extra $47 million that went in, or 52. I don't remember which the time period is, but we did grow. Last year we had not last year, but the year before we had a big downturn. This year we had a pretty nice increase. So we're at $687 million. So our total, go ahead.
It's Joanna. I just want to clarify for the committee. Actives mean active employees and inactives mean retirees.
Okay.
Thanks, Joanna. So our funded ratio, and this is something that I know Rick Geisenberger has always focused on, is our funded ratio has increased from 6.5% to 7.2%. And relative to the pension plan, it is a drop in a bucket compared to what the pension plan has in terms of their funded ratio. One thing to note here on the bottom, these are the counts of the participants that are eligible or future eligible for the plan. And our active employment increased from 39,000 to 40,000. Now the terminated vesteds, these are people that have left employment and are entitled to come back and collect a health benefit from the state. And they're roughly about the same, just under 4,000 participants. The LTDs, those people are on long-term disability. They've have left the system, but they're on long-term disability, and then they come back after they hit 65, after they come off the disability period, and then they can collect benefits from the state, roughly hovering around 500 participants. And then your inactive participants, that includes your surviving spouses, your retirees, and the retirees with a family coverage or whatever. That increased from 33,561 to 33,893. So overall, the state has a liability to approximately 78,564 members. And that's an increase from last year. So if we go to the next slide. some of the changes that happened, I just went over that our active counts increased 2.4%. Our inactive counts increased by 1%. That will increase the liabilities. Just adding more people to the plan increases liabilities. The second thing that has occurred over the last year were our claim curves. This is the assumption of the value of the benefit that's provided to the retirees. As we roll these forward, the liabilities, and we come up with the value of the benefits, every year healthcare increases, and we call those trends. So every single year, we're going to have an increase in our healthcare costs to the state and an increase in our healthcare costs to the retirees. What we had last year was we made an assumption that we would have a certain trend for the next year. WTW came in and reanalyzed the actual cost of care, and the increases were significant enough that we were able to utilize their projections in the actual trends for the claim curves this year. So if we're looking at the 4 lines below, we look at people under 65 and people over 65. That's the non-Medicare versus Medicare. And then we look at medical, and then we look at drug pharmacy. So in the first column is what we assumed the trends were from last year. And then the second column was the actual trends from the WTW projections. And as you can see, some of them were lot larger increases than what we assumed. You can see the 9.5% compared to the 8%. All of those changes increased the liabilities. If anybody, dig into it, it's just, I just wanted to tell you, it was the trends and the healthcare costs coming in higher than expected. The next bullet, the demographic assumptions. This plan follows the same assumptions as the pension plans that are underlying them. So if you're in the judge's plan, whatever the judge's assumptions are for retirement eligibility and the like are followed as the same as the pension plans. There were no changes there. So that was nice. So we don't have a lot of flexibility in that. The last bullet is the discount rate. Our discount rate went up from 3.54% to 3.65%. That actually reduces the liability. The higher the discount rate, it's the seesaw. The higher the discount rate, the lower the liability. So we like to get that discount rate up higher. So those are the key changes of what occurred between last year's valuation and this year's valuation. The difference between the $9 billion and the $9.6 billion liability. And we can get to the next slide. If anybody has any questions, just stop me.
One question, please.
Sure.
On the discount rate, is that driven by factors other than CPI and healthcare inflation? Or
It's
is it
driven
just
by
that?
a lot of factors, but those rates are based on the 20-year bond buy or go rate. So it's a long-term trend. It's a long-term discount rate that's utilized, and it's dictated by our GASB 7475 codifications.
Okay, and is it fair to say it does not, you're talking about a lot of factors and it's not something that's going to be swinging with a 2% change in the 10-year treasury, for instance, because it's a weighted thing that takes a lot of years into account. Is that fair?
That is fair, but it will be swinging, but it won't swing as dramatically as you think. If we just quickly go to the next slide, I can show you on the bottom, there is a row that says discount rate. And we started utilizing this rate in 2016 2016, 17, 18, in that area. We started utilizing these rates, and you can see what happened in 2020 and 2021. It dropped down to 2.1% and 2.16%. And that was due to the following of the COVID and low inflation. I'm not an economist, but you can see how the discount rate.
Near zero Fed rate was a factor in there, I would think.
Yeah, so as you can see how it is fluctuating between the 2017 and 2023. Right now the rate is roughly around 3.6 again, even now today in December. These rates were as of 6/30/23. But what I like about this chart is showing you a couple of things, and just as a committee, I just let you know, the gray bars are showing you the liabilities in billions, okay? And you see back down in 2009, it was roughly under $6 billion. Drive your eyes down to 2021, it's almost $11 billion. And as you see that discount rate increase, almost 140 basis points or so, you can see how it dropped the liability to just about 9 billion. And then this year it went up again to 9.5 billion. So go ahead.
Okay, so I think I may be asking about apples, oranges, and help me with that, if you will. We understood that by the legislature and the governor adopting the 1% of budget, and I'm gonna say in perpetuity, that would raise, it would narrow the gap, it would enable several positive things, it would narrow the gap to something like 60%, 65%, something like that. Are we looking at 20 or 30-year projections here, or is that an apples to oranges question for this presentation, for this graph?
This is historical. This is what has happened in the past. There's another slide that shows you the future.
Okay.
And what I like to hone in on is that if you see that dotted blue line, if you had funded the plan and paid an actuarial determined contribution that entire period of time, and the funded rates are below at 7.5, dropping down to 7, you could see how stable the liability would have been. It's just a would have, it's not is. What is happening now is the volatility of the liability is driven by those discount rates. Okay. Now, when you do go into the valuation, we do assume in this liability for 2023 that you are making that extra 1% of prior year budgeted codification into the plan forever and to perpetuity. In addition to the 0.36% appropriation that goes into the fund, in addition to you paying benefits outside of the trust. So if you, I believe it's the next slide, get to the next slide. This is our projection over the next 30 years, or 20 years, I'm sorry, next 20 years. And you see how the liability grows and then drops. And those gray bars on the left-hand side, that is what happens when you start funding, that our discount rate is gonna start increasing, but slowly until over time, when we've hit it's called a depletion test. It's called, when are your assets sufficient enough to cover those benefits of the people that are in the plan as of today? So it's looking like somewhere in 2035 that by 2035 you will have sufficient enough assets to pass the test to switch over to a 7% discount rate, which is the same investment return assumption that the pension plans uses. So, and as you can see, that helps mitigate a lot of the higher liabilities that we've shown in the past, where we are almost at 35 billion, $25 billion of liability just over 20 years. Just showing on the right-hand side, the gray area are our expected benefit payments going out. That blue line is the expected state contributions. And it's above the benefit payments because you're expected to pay the benefit payments. The extra area, the white area in between the blue line and the benefit payments, that's that 1% of budget, prior year's budget, plus the 0.36% of payroll. And then the little extra tick up in 2024 is that extra $100 million that was found by somebody, Rick or somebody, and throw it into the trust. So that's why it's a little tick up in the first year.
And this has been an important topic. I mean, I think from day one, we talked about the tripod, right, of funding, plan, design, eligibility. And I know with the subcommittee that started with Dave Crack and I, and then Jeff got into, I think it really portrays why our funding recommendation and some of the things are really an important consideration. Were you about to say something?
Yes,
Representative?
so Maria, I just want to point out that lower right graph of planned funding, you're using nominal dollars, so it doesn't reflect the 80% inflation between now and 20 years from now. It's not presented as a percent of the budget. So it's just presented in nominal dollars, correct? The lower right planned funding where you have pay-go cost and actual contribution.
That actually utilizes the cost of healthcare increasing throughout the period of time. And we assume a 3.6% growth on the prior year's budget.
Yes, so it's dollars, it's not as a percent of the budget, which is growing, let's say 3% a year, and therefore would grow 80% between now and 2043 at a 3% compounded annual growth rate. So it's showing growth, but it's not noting that the budget is similarly showing growth during the same time period.
I'm not sure I agree.
Well, it certainly is not showing what the dollars are as a percent of the state budget. Can you agree to that? There's no mention of the state budget here.
No,
Is
but
that true?
the 1% is based off of the state budget that is provided to us. And then the state budget is assumed to grow at 3.6% a year, and then we take 1% of that.
Yes, the contribution that the state is making is a percent of budget, yes. The pay-go cost, which looks like a scary ascension, does not reflect that at the same time, the underlying budget is growing at 3.6%. And so that context is not presented in this graph. I think that's accurate.
Seems that way to me. I'm not.
So
I mean,
basically,
Joanna, why don't
Margaret,
you-
the gray area is really the expenses, the healthcare, expected expenses for healthcare.
In terms of dollars,
In
not
terms
a
of
percent of the
dollars.
budget.
That is correct.
Right. And during this time, the budget's expected to double 100% growth as 3.6% over 20 years.
And then why we put as a recommendation, which of course affects budget and budget decisions of the legislature, governor. Why we included the change from 0.36 with the formula that David and others came up with to 0.5 or whatever number. I'm trying to remember what we used.
0.5 and then a quarter.
Yeah, 0.525%, but right. And again, that at the end would still be a legislative decision that would have to be made, but begin to tick, that's something we've talked about since March, getting to that around the funding piece. So. Any other questions online? Anyone questions? No questions? Not, we have our work cut out, of course.
And thank you.
Thank you.
And again, anyone online, and I know we're joined today by our secretaries and the others, if they certainly want to speak up any point in time, besides our chairs and us, please do so. All right, we certainly have made available the opportunity for any public comment on anything here. We always try to make sure for a public comment here, and then we'll have public comment again later, of course, but we always try to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. So no comment yet. All right.
Will there be a subsequent, or is this?
There should be.
On the agenda, it only shows public comment now.
But we can do it, because we were thinking about listening to folks before even our report too. So
Yes.
we can do it both ways, we can do it now, and if somebody has something they think of later, we're certainly not gonna let you talk. All right, so this is prior to us going over our recommendations in our report. We thought it would be nice. We've received a lot of great feedback. We've taken that into consideration. Everybody should have had those online. And so again, to be open to the community, we wanted them to at least have a chance to tell us prior to our going through the vote on the report. And it looks like
You have two signed up, here in the room, so we'll start with Mary Graham
Lieutenant Governor, I would like to comment on Mr. Emsley's motion, so I could wait till after you do the draft report if you want, or I can do it now.
Probably helpful now too. What do you think?
Do you want to discuss what we discussed regarding the motion and having it researched before the next meeting?
Oh, we could, yeah, we could do that.
You wanna start with that, so that provides
Yeah, why
context?
don't we do that? Okay, good. All right, sorry, and for those who are listening in, like, what are they talking about? Mr. Emsley, you had, I know, a motion that was put out there and, I tried reaching, but we're gonna talk now, but, I think there was some question Mr. Emsley had raised. Why don't you say what it was real quick that you had raised?
Yeah, the motion
Summary of
basically,
it.
yeah, the motion basically, without going through every word, was to ask the legislature and governor to identify whether or not there is a promise of benefits for retirees and employees. When they take on employment with the state.
Okay.
When I brought that motion up, Dave Craig said, well, really you don't need the motion because we know that meaning he knows that when you retire, your pension is guaranteed. But your health care is essentially at the whim of the state that they could drop it tomorrow. My personal view is, if that's true, then there is no long-term liability. There is no OPEB liability because there's no requirement to do anything in the future. So we've heard lots of retirees indicate that they felt that they were promised the benefit. We've got Dave saying one thing. We've got the OPEB liability, which in a sense to me says something else. And I think it's fair to new employees when who come on after 1/1/2025 that they know whether or not their health care benefits are a promise or whether it's something that can be removed at the state's discretion.
Thanks for bringing that up. And the one thing we decided in order to move forward with the focus of the report was to ask if we could lay that on the table because we were waiting for a legal opinion. I think Joanna, I don't think we have that yet from the Deputy Attorney General's office. We don't have that. And so we were not wanting to address that and hoping that if we could
Well,
lay that.
I don't think the motion is asking
Yeah.
for the answer. The motion is just asking the question. And in terms of the opinion from the Attorney General's office, that can be part of the legislature's determination and governor's determination if they decide to follow the recommendation. I'm not looking for this committee to have the answer. I'm looking for this committee to ask the question.
And I don't know what, if we have before us here, we were thinking if we could lay this, I think, on the table and bring it up in our next meeting when we have all the information. Where we know what the historical perspective has been from the DAG, so that we have all of that before us, because we're gonna continue the work of the subcommittee. The subcommittee is not gonna go away. And so because again, to put something out, to not have the full facts is kind of hard for people to vote on. So. go ahead,
And in addition,
Representative.
at a March 2024 meeting, if the subcommittee approves the recommendation in some form, there is more than 3 months for the legislature to take action on. So I'll say the delay is not a delay that prohibits the 2024 action by the legislature and the governor.
Right, and again, this is not in the duty of our committee and certainly the SEBC and the role of DHR. I mean, because again, we are advisory, and as you're right, we could make up any recommendations. We can come up with a list of 20 recommendations. But I think we all put such great work, and Wayne, you have put a lot of energy into this, and basically have been the editor of the report for us, and I really value that. So if you're able to, what we'd like to do is maybe have that tabled till March, and in the meantime, get more information, have the DAG, find out what is there and why these decisions, and to have more informed conversation.
It might also be worth delay even that action until public comment, because I think there may be public comment on that topic.
Sure, okay.
So we can just delay it.
Okay, unless, is that what you're gonna talk about?
I would like to address the motion, whether or not you table it.
Okay, well, go ahead, then why don't you do that now? So it makes sense, it's timely.
Timer's gonna come.
Okay, timer's on. This is, and identify for the record who you are.
Yes.
Do you wanna be on camera or off? Cause you can sit by me if you wanna be on camera.
Oh, I get to sit by you?
Yeah, do you wanna be on camera? That way they can see you. If you want,
Yeah.
I like somebody else on camera besides me. All right, there.
Yours low.
I know. Finding that knob.
This is only a trick.
See, I'll
You
leave
know,
that you can, if you.
My
can't
law
find the
firm
knob.
used to do this
Pull
too.
to the right.
Right here. Okay. So do I have to sit on it once? Pull to the right.
It won't work.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm really tall.
New office, new chairs.
So, thank you, Lieutenant
Yes, you
Governor.
got
My name is Mary Brown, and actually, this is the first time that I have been able to come to this meeting with my full eyesight. I've had my surgeries and I have new glasses so I can see all of you, but don't worry, I'm not gonna comment on anybody.
All right, great. Thank you.
With respect to Mr. Emsley's motion, and first of all, I'm really glad that the RHBAS is going to continue meeting. You are a permanent committee, the governor has recognized it as such, and you are a place that retirees feel that we have a voice, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and that we're listened to. With respect to Mr. Emsley's motion, and I certainly don't ascribe any bad motives to Mr. Emsley. He's been very helpful, and I can understand the desire for clarity, but this motion, and I can only comment on it as written, is problematic. First of all, it's the place where clarity really comes from, and certainly when there's a dispute, is the courts, not from the governor's office and not from the legislature. And we know we have a dispute. I mean, it's just been identified. Apparently, David Craig believes that there aren't rights. And I can tell you that many, many other people do. So the place for that would be where you would have evidence from both sides, and you would have legal positions from both sides, not just from your DAG. And also to be in public, you're going to get your DAG advice in private. We're never going to get to hear it, so we'll never be able to challenge it. So that's where, if you're going to ever get clarity for current people who believe they've been promised a benefit, you'll only get it from the court. So to then go out and solicit something else is just going to provoke ire and contention, and you're going to underdo the good work that you have done. So I would really hope that you don't do that. And I want to make a comment with respect to number 5. It says, it appears that this promise of health benefits was rarely, if ever, provided in writing. Well, RISE does have records from people, but we don't pass out our firepower, especially to the administration, so to preview what our cases are. But I can tell you there is material in writing. There, people feel there was a promise under promissory estoppel, and the Constitution of Delaware is in writing the emoluments clause, which says you shall not diminish the emoluments of public officers, judges. Now, somebody might say, DAG might say, oh, that doesn't apply, but I can guarantee you, because I've had discussions, the judges who are out there feel they do have a right and that it is in writing. So let's let things quiet down. We don't need another fight that is not going to actually, or another motion that's not going to actually accomplish anything. So I would just ask that you just table it forever and not come back to it, because it does make a difference. You know, it's not a tree falling in the forest. It will be heard and understood and interpreted. So thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Very good. And under 3 minutes. At time. Thank you very much. Any other comments on the report before we jump in? And certainly you can make it at the end.
We do have Dale Swain as
Dale.
well.
Okay. Oh, good. Sorry about that. My bad.
Oh, fine, back to me.
We can call each other first names. We grew up near each other. All right.
Known each other for a long time.
Yes.
Okay. As far as this committee continuing on, I've said it a couple of the meetings, I will say it again. A lot of times, whether it's at the state level, whether it's at the county level, school board level, you have committees that get started where they have token public members are assigned, or the public comments are recorded and thrown in a trash can. This committee should be the model for how committees are done, whether it's at the state, local, school board level. You guys have done phenomenal of taking feedback from the public and incorporating that into the solutions that you have provided. I can't say enough about all of you guys and our chairpersons. It's a great process. And I've said this in other scenarios, but you really have a lot of citizens, whether they're retired or not retired, that have a lot of good things to say and contribute. And with all the great minds that we have on the committees, pulling in the public comment really adds to the committee. And I feel like what RISE has done for this committee and other public members, Wayne and Diane have contributed immensely to helping you guys produce the report that you have. So I want to compliment everything that you have done. Glad that it's going forward, as Mary says, and hopefully this is recognized as our next governor comes into office and continues that process forward.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, all the committee, thank you for that. Thanks for coming up.
I did suggest to the next governor, this will be a new governor after 2024, so.
My face matches my shirt. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, and my cup, everything's red, but thank you. And we'll remember that, because there may be days when we don't always have the same agreement, but
Yeah.
thank you, it's the openness. And this has been a good committee who spent many hours in the staff, and thank you all for that. Can't say enough about the staff, that's for sure. Whew. All right, so now comes the fun. Now that you've skipped recess for us to be productive, so let's be as productive as possible. I know a couple of us have to have an early departure. Representative Bombach and Senator Townsend will lead out the meeting. I do have to leave at noon. So in the next hour, as much as we can get through on item five, and we will get that completed today. And my proxy vote is definitely a yes to getting this report out today, that is for sure. So why don't I turn now, if you would like, Kristen, do you want to give us some direction? I think you can navigate us through.
Sure.
And then we'll continue. Go ahead.
So since the last meeting, I did send out a draft to all the members, and I didn't get any comments back from the members. I know there were some comments back, from members of the public, which we did review, and with Mr. Emsley's help, we made a few slight changes to the report. I'll just list them. They're nothing major, but on the first page of the report, the title, and these that I'm talking about right now are not reflected on the draft that you have right now, so that's why I want to point them out, because the draft was updated last night. So on the first page of the report, the title was.
Sorry, that is the one that you sent us last night, so I was able to print that this morning. The people logging virtually.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So those in person have the updated, those who are online don't yet, those of us here have the updated.
Okay, so, but I'll still point them out just so everyone.
Sure, for those
just for
online,
full transparency. So on the first page, the report title was changed to the report of the Retiree Healthcare Benefits Advisory Subcommittee. Previously, it said report on the Retiree Healthcare Benefits Advisory Subcommittee. We added an additional recommendation. It's not a new recommendation. We just added it to a section under recommendations to the governor and legislature. That's on page 14. So you'll see previously there was only 6, and now the 7th it's a recommendation that was made, but it just wasn't placed in this section. So it has to do with the one-time contributions. It had only been put in the section under the SEBC.
And then there was a minor change on page 13 under item 2. We changed 0.50% to 0.50%, just to make that consistent with the other number. And that is all. Those are all the changes that have been made since the last meeting. And I did scratch out something for the future. I don't know if you want to discuss that now. Bethany, I emailed it to you while Margaret was talking.
Margaret was right.
So this is what I wrote, that we could put in any section that has to do with the committee's future activities.
go ahead,
Paul, I
everybody
sent it
listening?
to you too.
Okay.
The subcommittee will continue to meet to study options to provide strong state retiree healthcare benefits in a fiscally sustainable way, address areas of focus requiring further analysis, monitor the status of recommendations made and the impact of actions on the OPEB liability, and receive public comment about future state retiree healthcare benefits. So I'll just put that. I think there's there's a couple spots in here where we talk about the committee going forward.
Did everyone hear that, or do you need her to read that again? Everyone okay with that? Everyone.
That seems to be I would think
Page
the location at the
14
bottom of
and
page
the
14
locations.
is an obvious location.
And there may be another.
There's a section at the very end,
where it would go.
where it's on page 14, expected. I mean, maybe, I don't know if I need to take out the expected meeting cadence, just to give us some flexibility
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
I'd say scope. Well, and are we looking for a date of a next report? So maybe even take time from now, just an expected scope of additional
Expected scope, yeah.
meetings and recommendations.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
figured maybe
Yeah, the
take out
timeline
the new
had been there
report, because I
before.
don't know.
In the timeline, we stuck it there, because
Just-
yeah.
It had been previous language,
So if everyone online is following along, she just came up with a nice narrative that was broad enough to allow us direction for the future, and it didn't pigeonhole either.
Yeah.
In theoretical terms, that's known as parsimony. You're a very parsimonious writer. So for all the educators in the room. Right, yeah.
And Kristen, the previous section, the immediately prior section, area of focus requiring further action analysis, maybe that's actually where that should be.
That's what I'm
Just
saying.
put it in there
Yeah,
at the end and take out that
And-
expected meeting cadence.
yeah, and maybe just add a
Just to
sentence that the subcommittee expects to continue to meet regularly
Yeah.
to address these areas of focus.
Okay,
Sounds good.
okay,
Wow,
Instead of saying regularly, why don't I say as needed?
as needed,
okay.
Because it may not.
That's good by me.
okay.
Sorry.
Okay,
All right.
I think that's all I have.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have items?
So I'm just gonna, I just ask some questions, on page 4, under report background. We lay out, about the legal challenge, and my question is, do the members feel the report would be better if it included an update just saying that the stay is currently effective and the legal challenge is, still,
Where would
in
that
the
go?
appeal process,
Very good.
somewhere in the 3rd paragraph,
So is it as of
as of the date of this
the date
report.
of this report?
The legal challenge remains under appeal and the stay remains in place. I'm just asking, is that something that's
Yeah, I mean,
beneficial to the
this
report?
is it makes sense. The matter's still pending in the Delaware Supreme Court. I think briefing's done and argument's been scheduled for the end of January, isn't it? So just noting that the matter is still pending at the time of the
At the time of the report? We just want to preface it with the clause at the time of this report.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's take a vote on that one. Everybody okay? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any
Aye.
abstentions? Everybody aye.
And that would- and that
Any
would go at
nays?
And that would go at the end of that paragraph,
Yeah.
at the end of that section, I assume.
And can I ask though, I didn't get clarity online, were there any abstention or nays? I'd like to have those documented if so.
Abstain.
Okay,
Lieutenant
what-
Governor, this is Claire.
Yes, go ahead.
On the,
Go ahead.
on the full report, I'm going to vote no because I don't believe it addresses the issues in a timely fashion. I don't support putting off some of the solutions till new hires
Okay.
after 1/1/25.
Okay.
And I just don't think in general we have a sense of urgency, particularly in light of the report today by Margaret. I just don't think there's enough sense of urgency to solve these problems.
Okay, and that's fine. And so if you have to leave early, I mean, we can have your documented vote now, in the comments. I don't know if you're able to stay the entire time, Madam Secretary. But we certainly respect that and understand why you have that position and the seat that you sit in. But certainly respect that. So we have that documented, and you can certainly let us know if you're here. You can voice that again later. She is a no, and Representative Overly was abstaining on the motion about adding in the clause around the lawsuit. Hers was the whole report. Okay, so it's very different. Okay, yes, Representative Overly.
Just at the risk of editorializing, I guess the greater question in my mind is why is the legal challenge still being pursued by the state? I've never quite understood that, so that justifies my abstention.
Okay, just my abstention, okay.
My second question is on page 6, where there's a 7 bullet list of regarding public comments and concerns that were raised. There's a question, I'm trying to, and I don't know the answer to this. Were the bulk of the complaints from the public complaints of Medicare Advantage, or were they complaints of the specific Highmark Medicare Advantage plan that was selected by the SEBC? Or was it a combination? And what's the best way to encapsulate that in that list? We just leave it Medicare Advantage, or are there benefits to adding that clarification if we feel that better characterizes the comments?
So your question would be, do you put the trademark name and the corporation Highmark in front of all, or do we just include it in the initial discussion? To do it there. I personally, when I made these votes and recommendations, it was not linked to a particular company. It was in generality myself.
And I don't remember, is Mayo Clinic, they don't accept any, or they hadn't signed on to the Highmark as an example, or any Highmark one, for instance? Do we, if we don't know, I think keeping it general is the right way to go.
Yeah, I would agree that general is probably the best way to go.
That's the way we voted on it
Being
already.
provider specific.
I mean, not in the report voted, but voted on their each set of
Right, sure,
recommendations
yeah.
when we were voting on recommendations. Yes.
I think to answer your question, I had 2 folks send me literally the pages from Mayo Clinic. And it just said, we don't accept Medicare Advantage as a general group. So, great.
Okay, on that same page, there's a 3 bullet list of what the RBSC had looked at. And I didn't see change of plan going from a Medigap, a Medicare supplement to a Medicare Advantage. Eligibility changes doesn't cover that. State funding of OPEB trust fund, I don't think covers that. I don't really think addressing the costs, you can say that covers everything. But I would have thought plan design change is something the RBSC absolutely covered and should be added as a 4th bullet item.
Let me see what you're saying.
What page you want?
Page
Yeah.
6,
Page
the
6.
bottom 3 bullets.
Okay.
And.
So I would use the words change the retiree healthcare plan design. So that's
Where are you? Give me,
right here.
all right,
Bullet list.
bullet, right,
Yep.
right, increase, okay. So for those who are following along, bottom of page 6, for those of us who have it in print, it starts the subcommittee review the fiscal year 2024 GHIP cost projections, that paragraph, and it lists table A1 in the appendix, and it has 3 bullets. Increase state funding for the OPEB trust fund, address Medicare eligible and pre-Medicare costs, review eligibility for future retirees, and you were saying to add the bullet.
Plan, I thought the
Plan
3 we
design,
looked at
we
was
did.
funding, eligibility,
It was,
and plan design.
right.
Those are the 3
Yeah.
we've always been talking about. Plan design sound explicitly
Right.
listed
It's not
here, and I think it
explicitly
should be.
listed. That's not that. Makes sense, I mean, that's what we've done.
I wanted to make sure it was accurate in terms of the RBSC, because I wasn't around when that was going on, so I don't.
And I think that the reason he put that is because it was, why she left it out, because it specifically talked about cost, and I think they were looking at the trust fund, the cost, and then the eligibility requirements, because if you look at paragraph prior, it says GHIB cost projections and premiums, so, but plan design is wrong.
And Faith and Mike, who are on that, can correct me, but I know we did look at plan design.
Did you, we should add in the plan design?
There was at least one time when we had an individual from the state of Ohio address us about the possibility of HRA
You're right.
and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, so we
individual
should put that in
individual
there. Yeah.
marketplace.
Yeah.
I think we also did have some conversation, probably very limited around Medicare Advantage and other options, but I
Oh, we
know in
sure did.
particular, there was a day dedicated to what they did in Ohio around providing people with an HSA or an HRA and then putting them into the individual marketplace, which would have been plan design change.
Right,
So we
right, and we
did
had
talk
the
about that
folks,
at the
we talked
RDS.
about Rhode Island and all, okay, all right.
Okay.
So if there are any,
Maureen, you good?
let's, anyone online have thoughts on that? In favor or against, please speak up, we're gonna, adding in, if you, let's say this, if you don't like it, speak up. Silence means you're good, if you're fine with us adding in the fourth bullet item around.
Change the retiree healthcare plan design.
So hearing.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
it's Michael.
Representative.
Yes, I am in favor, and I do have to go into the services now. So I just wanted to, for the record, make sure you knew that I am also in favor in the overall when that vote is cast. But I have to go into the services
We
at
have
this
your
moment. if
proxy
that's
then. Okay, thank you, Representative.
Yes.
Sorry for your.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
see you later. Have a great new year.
And I only, this may be my last one, this is next to the last one, page 8 at the top. There's and let me say, I put out a bunch of things and Kristen got, almost all of them in there, so it may look like there's a bunch. They've been submitted, they've been incorporated, and I'm so thankful all that Kristen's done. And some of these were ones she came back and said, we need to talk a little more, need to have some confirmation broader. So if you look for the 58 million, and this is like 8 lines down in parentheses, so it talks about where's the beginning of the sentence, a long one. It talks about the costs that are paid, approximately 6.7 million in premiums are paid annually by retirees to the state. In addition to approximately 58 million in monthly premiums paid to Medicare, I would like it clear that that's paid by retirees to Medicare. Because I think it's this paragraph in particular emphasizes who's paying what.
So you're on page 8,
Yes.
as those who have the hard copy.
About 8 lines down, there's a clause in parentheses. And I would insert the words by retirees, so that it's in addition to approximately 8 million in monthly premiums paid by retirees to Medicare.
And the paragraph begins, the Medicare system provides approximately 80% of benefits. So if you look at that paragraph, Representative, say your comment one more time, please. I know you said it twice, but 3 is good.
So this paragraph talks about what the state pays and what the retiree pays. The clause in parentheses isn't absolutely clear as to who pays it. So this just clarifies that the 58 million in monthly premiums paid to Medicare is paid by retirees.
Any comments from anyone? Again, if I don't hear any comments, that means you're in agreement. So no comments mean you agree. If you have comments of concern, please express those.
Madam Chair, I agree.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Commissioner of Insurance, we're missing your other room, but these are pretty nice stakes here. You're gonna have to come visit here. You've been very kind in hosting us.
I can't wait.
Not quite as large as your room. You have a little bigger room, but we're good. We're good. Is that it? Okay, all right. Yes.
Back on page 6, Kristen, the prior sentence, the word 3 is gonna be need to change to 4.
Right, okay, thank you for pointing that out.
Sure.
I know.
What is that? Can you say that again,
It
please?
says the subcommittee reviewed the 3 classifications
This is
of
why he is
we
a
added.
teacher.
Yeah.
Where are his pretzels? We should get him back the pretzels around the room. I think that deserves a chocolate covered pretzel.
You get a pretzel, you get a pretzel.
Anybody back here want a pretzel? Here you go. Let's reward the pupil for
We should
that.
really pass these around. And I will.
You're gonna have to eat them at home, Wayne.
Uh,
All right, stop.
Lieutenant Governor,
Yes.
if we could revisit the change on the first paragraph on page 8, that moved very quickly. Joanne and I are having a little sidebar here.
Okay, so we may need to make some comments.
Well, I think we're a bit uncomfortable with making the recommended change to the reference to the 58 million in monthly premiums paid to Medicare.
Do you have a recommendation of what, another sentence somewhere or?
Well, on the fly, I mean, I think with a change that just received consensus from the subcommittee was paid to Medicare by retirees. Was that the
Yes.
change?
Yes.
Okay, again, we're doing this on the fly, but that 58 million, if I'm understanding Representative Bomback's suggested change, you're suggesting that would tie to the Part B premium payment that the retirees pay each month? Is that what you had in mind?
Yes.
Okay, so, which I think is about $180 a month, correct? So when I just do the rough math on
The
that,
numbers all-
that's only $5.2 million a month.
Oh,
So I'm not
Yes.
sure.
Everyone's a high.
it's not monthly, it's annually. That's the problem. The 58 million was annually. So either make it, I don't have any problem with the 5.2.
Or why don't you just give the actual
Well-
number?
How do we know, like, where does this
Where
number
did-
come from?
It came from me.
Uh,
And the way I came up with it was, I took the $180 a month times 12,
so maybe-
times the number of Medicare retirees that were reported by you to me.
So do we put what they
So-
contribute as of the report?
I would,
What would
I
you
would
say for
caution you, we do have lots of state employees who are considered high income earners, or retirees who are considered high income earners. Therefore, they are paying more than, so they're paying roughly close to $500 a month.
I'm well aware of
But
that.
I think I would change,
Is there a way to?
my
change that?
recommendation is to change it to what the current cost for Medicare is. Each retiree would be responsible for contributing this amount per month or annually for costs, because we have no way to verify that number is
That
accurate.
number, and the members of the legislature assume it's accurate, so what would be the best way to make it accurate?
But I think we can use the term at least to cover those who are paying a higher dollar amount. I think, to me, the purpose of this paragraph is to have apples, similar large numbers of annual dollars going from one party to the other. So I'd rather not have monthly 180 or up to 500 or things like that, and rather say retirees are paying this big dollar into Medicare, they're paying this smaller dollar into the OPEB, and the state is paying this large dollar into OPEB.
Okay,
That's what I think the purpose of the paragraph is.
I appreciate that. What I have a concern with is saying, according to the Office of Pensions.
Okay.
So that if this is not a number that is provided by our office and we cannot trace that to a publicly available number, I would be a little cautious with that.
Okay, so
Then
we need to.
we can take it as a second sentence,
Yeah,
then,
I'm fine
a
with
I think you
standalone
need
second
I
sentence.
think it needs to be
Yeah.
second sentence.
I just don't-
because you don't wanna,
We're publishing an unverified number, which is my concern.
and that's your
Absolutely.
job to correct that.
So, go ahead, Bill.
Representative
Sorry.
Ray.
The question I have is how accurate is the 58 million annually?
We
It's a-
wouldn't know, we don't have access
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
It's a low number. We know it's a low number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but say, is Secretary Geisenberger, is that your voice I heard?
No, that was Commissioner Navarro. And
Oh.
he's right.
Big difference,
This-
big difference, but I recognize the voice, okay, go ahead.
That's okay. The point was that it was paid out by retirees, not the state. And that is, to everyone else's point, that is a low number. Basically, because that number is based off the salary, right? So I think saying that at a minimum, this amount is paid, I think is fair. And whether we attribute it to members of this meeting, Mr. Emsley, I think is fine, but it is a minimum.
So then you would edit this, y'all would, like, according to the Office of Pensions, approximately 6.7 million in premiums are paid annually by the retirees, comma, with the remaining 1.5 million covered by the state, period, then a new sentence? Is that
New
what you like, and
sentence.
what would the new
In
sentence say?
addition, comma, at least $55 million annually,
55 or 58?
sorry, $58 million annually is paid by retirees to Medicare in the form of monthly premiums.
Approximately, you need to use the word
That was
approximately,
at least instead,
at least, okay.
which is better to show the direction. We know it's at least that is paid annually by retirees in the to Medicare in the form of monthly premiums.
Can we put a footnote that says that number's based on X dollars per month times X number of people in the plan? So it's clear how the 58, at least those 58 million rolls up. Sure. I think that would be helpful to you also, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I think Is there an absolute way to quantify what that number would be?
No, because you don't know, you know that each retiree pays at least so much, but you don't know what he or she actually pays. Because like Joanna said, some people are high earners and may pay more.
And CMMS doesn't release data on a state by state basis of the amount of premiums coming in from state residents.
But you may have the opposite too, where there are low income
Well,
earners and
Correct.
Medicaid that helps. with that.
Right, we have several employees
That's
that
why
are
I
on
think
dual
a footnote
eligible.
explaining how the number was arrived on gives people an idea that this is based on the following assumptions. X dollars per month times 12
Can you
months a
write that
year
footnote, Wayne?
times
Footnote.
however many retirees is how we rolled that number up.
Estimated at.
So if we could have the footnote in there, so anyone okay with that, everyone okay with those changes, so we pulled out the second sentence, so it's not referenced with the pension office. It's clearly at least, and then a footnote explaining how these assumptions were derived at, for clarity. Everybody there?
Number of a footnote.
Good.
Yes.
But your substitute teachers, I see, I love it.
That has nothing to do with the teacher,
The lawyer.
that's the lawyer.
All right, so, wow, do you have a drum roll? Like, are we really here? Is it really Christmas? Can we really go early? Are we really gonna be done early? Oh my gosh, we bring the lucky chocolate pretzels all the way to the meeting, right?
Or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, man, let's try. So I think we're at the point to call the question. We have Representative Ramon's proxy. I don't have Secretary DeMatteis had to leave. We have her vote in. Wow, can we have a motion on our report from someone, please?
We've got a hand up.
Oh, we have a hand up.
Denise Allen.
Denise, any other hands before we vote? Denise, oh, you need to unmute. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say that, and I wrote it in a comment, a chat, but the draft report, it was very well organized and written, easy to follow. And so thanks for all the hard work that was put in to get that ready. I just wanted to give kudos to.
Kristen and Wayne, you should come sit in the chair and get a pretzel.
And I would add in there the public feedback that we've gotten in the
Absolutely.
past weeks, and some of the changes include those from Mr. Clark.
Absolutely.
And that Kristen and Wayne were able to, take and incorporate in there, so
Everyone.
this has
Thank
been a
you.
group effort, and Kristen indeed, as being the center person, thank you so much.
Center
for this.
person, and then we'll decide how it's presented.
More to Kristen than
Yeah.
Kristen did.
But thank you all, a lot of hard work from the public, the community, Rise to all the organizations, and it's been a lot of work.
Madam
Very
Chair,
impressive.
Senator Townsend.
I apologize. I didn't mean to not have you have last word on that. Please have the last
No,
word.
you have the last word, sir. You're the majority leader. I know that.
No, not at all. I want to echo your and Representative Bombach and Denise and others' praise for the staff and all their hard work, their responsiveness. It was extremely impressive. And I guess I'll just, as a side note on that, anyone who can kind of corral everything that Paul Bombach throws at them is someone deserving very much of some kind of formal trophy of some sort. But I do want to also note just now, Lieutenant Governor, you used the word center person. And certainly people deserve praise, but I want to make sure that that label is very much associated with you on this effort. I don't
Thank
know
you.
if people realize how much
me
work
red.
went into this. Not when I say behind the scenes, I don't mean any kind of, it's in full transparency in all our meetings, but all the coordinating and wrangling that goes into taking all these ideas and making sure trains are running on time and everyone is thinking through things the way they have to, including the staff and putting everything together. I don't know if people realize how much work that you put into it. So I truly, truly appreciate all that you were willing to dedicate to this. I know that you knew that when you agreed to take on the chair role back in January or February, whenever that was.
Yes.
But just tremendously thankful that that there were high expectations for you and you overperformed those high expectations. So thank you so very much for all your work on this.
Senator. Thank you, Senator. Yeah, when we met, I didn't know we were gonna have like 25 or 26 meetings, and but I've gotten to know a lot of people's emails, just like yours and Representative Bombach, and to both of you as well. I mean, there's been a lot of meetings behind, not closed doors, but behind the scenes, an open conversation with so many organizations. I know to you, Senator, and the readings you brought in, and we will get to those long-term care initiatives that are so passionate for you. We will get to those, I know. And so this is kind of like the next step. It's not the end, it's the next step. But again, to the staff, both at the pension office, DHR, to our consultants and others, thank you. We have a lot of work. We'll get together, I guess, in January, and then certainly a committee meeting in March. So,
Can we clap?
let's vote first. Let's get the vote. Then we'll
Don't
clap.
jinx us now.
Yeah,
For that,
yeah, don't
since
jinx
we're-
us.
Since we're doing accolades.
Yeah.
Mr. Swain was really nice this morning, giving everybody on the committee their due. But I think the public needs to be
They've
acknowledged
sent us a
because
lot of
the
information.
amount of things we've received from people,
Mr.
the
Clark and
quality,
Mr.
Mr. Clark and
Mr.
Mr. LePage,
LePage.
everybody.
It's been amazing.
They're a big reason, in fact, in my mind, they are the biggest reason why this committee worked the way it did. And I think we would be remiss if we did not thank all of them for
Absolutely.
everything they did.
So
So
rise.
as we cheer, let's do it with everybody.
Okay, so when
After
we,
the vote.
after those, yeah.
And in order to, I'll just say, and I'd like to thank Senator Townsend for authoring Senate Bill 29, which
Yeah.
established the RHBAS.
Yes.
So I would like to move the report as drafted with the modifications we discussed and approved today.
Second.
Oh, my goodness, we have a motion and second. All in
Second.
favor? Oh.
Aye.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 And we know Secretary Demanis, I believe she had to leave. We had her motion of no.
No, yeah.
Are there any? Oh, you're
And
here?
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still here. I vote no. Thank you.
Uh-huh. And anyone else? No? Anyone abstaining? Okay. So having received the required and sufficient number of votes, the RHBSC will issue its report by January 1 with cover letter to our governor, members of the legislature, as so by here noted. I need my gavel. Now, you all can happily do whatever you want in this room. Don't get over happy. We now gotta figure out how we get all the money and get all this stuff, right? Bring money. All right, so with that,
Have we completed the discussion of Mr. Emsley's motion, or if we're moving to
we
the
had moved
March
it to that
meeting?
March meeting. We had moved
Okay.
it to from the
Okay,
table.
we'll make sure
to
that
yeah.
was, we were closed on that.
Yes, we were closed on that. Anything else for anyone at all? Because if not, we'll go for adjournment.
Do we have any dates?
Any dates? Not yet. We'll have to send a poll around on that for you.
I think you said we're gonna make another.
Yeah, another public comment.
Oh, another public comment. I'm so sorry. Anybody else have any public comment? Maybe the claps will public comment. I don't know. Public comment?
Lieutenant Governor, can I
Yes.
just add a very short comment to,
Yes.
I wanna just comment something that.
Yeah. You may have to come
pointed
over
out.
here so people can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to, this is Mary Graham again. I wanted to just highlight something that Mr. Emsley said that has been on my mind for a long time, so I'm really glad you said it, which is the relationship of OPEB to the promise to retirees for their, and future retirees for their healthcare. I think you said as if there was no promise, then there wouldn't be an OPEB liability, and I viewed it similarly, but the other way, which is given that there is an OPEB liability, there must be a promise. Why would you have to record all of this liability for something if it wasn't a promise? I don't know the legal, analysis of that, but it just makes sense to me, and I agree with Mr. Emsley on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else public comment? Mr. Swain?
I can say it right from here. I just wanted to second what Bill Overlay had said earlier in regards to the pending court
Can
situation.
you all hear him online? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
I had mentioned this at one other meeting, but with all this stuff that this committee has done, with the promises and very transparent process that the issue is resolved for 2024, 2025, 2026 in regards to Medicare Advantage. Why is the state still pursuing fighting in the courts? It's spending our taxpayers' dollars to pursue something that should not even be going forward at this point. It's been resolved from the public's perspective. Why is the state not just dropping the appeal? I cannot understand that at all.
All right. Duly noted. Anyone else, public comment, anyone online that did not get to speak, that would like to speak?
Bob Clark.
Bob Clarkin? We have to unmute you, or you have to unmute yourself. Okay,
Hopefully I just did.
you
Can
did.
hear me?
Yes,
I
we can.
just have a really, really short comment, and that is, thank you very much.
Wow, usually you send them lots of good, helpful binders of information.
Well,
Senator
still-
Townsend,
Yep.
his hand was up. Sorry, Bob, did I cut you off?
No, I still have some binders, but
Okay.
I'm holding them for the future.
I have a feeling they'll be in March. Okay. All right, Senator Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to note real quick, I have not discussed with anyone at the state regarding the legal case and the appeal to the Supreme Court. But being familiar with legal proceedings in my other job, I guess I want to note my understanding and my expectation would be that the reason the appeal is still occurring is because the implications of the court ruling specific to the issue of the retiree health plan, the judicial reasoning or the judicial opinion at the trial court level is a decision that can have implications for other issues that are unrelated to retiree health. So my guess would be the state's appealing it because it relates to a whole lot of other things as well. And there needs to be clarity or confirmation, or obviously from the state's perspective, overruling of the trial court. I don't think this is proper. I don't think, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think it's proper to view this as they are fighting this because they are still fighting the active decision at this point with regard to retiree healthcare. So I certainly invite anyone else on the call who is more, not just more formally, but in any way, shape, or form, formally associated with the executive branch, if they want to comment on that. I just, I think it's important for the citizenry to understand, legal proceedings and the crafting of our laws, broadly defined. And I think people who are expressing concern about the Supreme Court appeal, I don't want to let that go unmentioned, that I think there are other reasons for an appeal process, not simply the issue of retiree health.
Thank you, Senator, for that. Appreciate that.
Could I respond to that?
Yes, well, I'll allow that since we're early and we're being unique and it's near Christmas.
So I don't want to go
Mary
into a long,
Graham.
yeah, this is Mary Graham again. I don't want to go into a long response to that, Mr. Townsend, but the distinction here, I understand that what you were saying might fit somewhere else, but the case is moot. There is no case or controversy anymore. All that was decided by the judge and all that can have precedential effect is what was decided that was brought to him. And that is whether or not the SEBC violated the APA and with FOIA. So that decision was made, but now the SEBC has taken away the February 28th meeting. So the case is moot. And once that courts, the Supreme Court does not usually want to weigh in with an advisory opinion. So that's what we're looking at. And we are having, as the retirees, to support this lawsuit. It's very expensive and it's really, really unjustified and unfair. And meanwhile, the public is having to fight it on the other side. And if they wanted to actually get the kind of thing that Mr. Townsend is talking about, then why not talk to us and see what we could come together on to satisfy their concerns? But they won't. So there we are.
Thank you. Okay, one more hand has gone up, it looks like, right? Who is that?
Linda Hastings.
Yes.
What
good
is
morning.
it? Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I wanted to echo a little bit of what Mary said, although she said it well. But so Senator Townsend talked about all of the bureaucratic reasons why the state might want to continue with this, except they're doing this against the Rise Delaware lawsuit. And who's having to pay the other side for the state to establish some legal precedent? It's all us retirees who keep having to donate to keep funding the lawyers for the lawsuit. I'm sorry, but this isn't fair. It isn't just. And if you want to get some kind of legal precedent, find somebody else to pay for the other side of it. It's not right that we should have to continue paying for this. I'm done.
Thank you for your comments. Joan
Delpatour.
Hold on, Joan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
I'm Joan Delpatour. I'm a retired UD professor
first, thank you very much to the committee, to the leadership of the committee, to the members of the committee, and to the public. The retirees really stepped forward. I laughed before when retirees were described as inactives. I understand what it means. Anybody who thinks that the retirees are inactive has not been paying attention. With respect to the lawsuit, I would like some examples of precisely what exactly, other than retiree health benefits, were implicated in that lawsuit. And I would like an explanation for why that lawsuit is the appropriate manner and place to continue with trying to establish precedents that have nothing to do with retiree health care. Why is Rise Delaware, and that means us, that means the retired state employees, are carrying the financial burden of this case, which at best has nothing to do with us, and to the extent that it has anything to do with us, it's already moot. So I am not convinced that this is worth going forward. I am not convinced that the reason the state is going forward is that it's trying to establish some undefined precedent for what goes on in other issues that have nothing to do with retiree health care. This case is like a vampire. It's dead. Put a stake through it, and that's it. Thank you.
Amen.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? I don't think so. I don't see any other hands. So I guess that means that we'll be showing thank you again to the hard work of Kristen and team DHR and everyone. We're gonna get that report forwarded, cover page before January 1, before 2024. And everyone rest up, no matter what holidays, Hanukkah that you just celebrated in the past, the lights, or if you're with Christmas or Kwanzaa. Please be healthy, be well. The nurse always ends by saying, get your flu shots, wash the hands. There's a triple-demic, we have several people hospitalized right now, so let's do the right thing. So have a great holiday, and we'll be together probably sometime in January informally to present, and then back together in March. So thanks.
Second.
I move to adjourn. Anybody opposed? If not, we are adjourned with the RHBSS. We're done in 2023.
Well done, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Townsend. Thank you, Senator Representative Von Bach.
Thank you.
Yeah.